Morning. Friday. Today is September 11th, and I hope everybody's having a good week. Been a pretty crazy week here in Southern California. Actually, the whole West Coast is on fire right now. Every year we go through these wildfires, and they are scary. They're intense. My thoughts and prayers to everybody and anybody who's involved. Actually, I had some family members in Oregon who were evacuated, and thank the Lord they're okay. Property's okay. We just had a fire just 5 minutes down the road. Fire department did a fantastic job of putting a lid on that. Still some hot spots, so if you still hear helicopters going around, that's what's going on. For what's happening at peak cycles, first off, we have light. I just thought it was kind of dark here in the office looking back at videos, so up the light game, and hopefully you can see me now. Secondly, we're going to go over brake tabs. I did a custom brake tab for a GCG frame, a client order. We're going to go over that here in just a moment. After that, we will weld on a suicide shift mount. Basically a piece of 7/8 tubing, but we'll show you how that works here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and get things started and see what's happening with peak cycles. On to project number 3, and this GCG is requiring a brake tab. And it's going to be fun doing this because I really don't want to take the bike apart, and this tab needs to be welded in right here. All this paint and powder coat grinded off, welded in and grinded smooth. So I'm going to try and remove the back wheel, keep everything else together, and then fabricate it as is. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is what we have so far. I'm pretty happy with this. Quite a few things to take into consideration when doing this. One, we're trying to have the tab stay on the dropout plate here. I'm going to use the same gauge so everything blends and is in line. You can see the chainstay widens out here, and we're trying to end the tab before it gets to that point. The other thing is I like to use slots, so it gives you some breathing room for the caliper to slide back and forth. Also gives you options for changing out rotor size. And lastly is the shape. We don't have a whole lot of options there, so what I did is I took this line to follow the chainstay and this line to follow the dropout. Go ahead and throw the caliper on there, give you a better look. So this is pretty much it. I have it designed so that the caliper can slide all the way down. You're getting the most brake pad on the rotor there, and then you just back it off just a hair. I'm going to hand cut this. Let's go ahead and keep it going. How's that for some fancy CAD work? Going to take care of a couple things here before we start cutting. One is this transition right here. I'm going to use a hole saw, so to give us a nice circular transition. We're also going to drill out the holes for the slots so that we know that the caliper is lined up. Once we know we're good with all of that, we'll start cutting. I know what you're thinking. Really? Piece of cardboard? And I have done this many, many times. And when you're doing just one, hand cutting, piece of cardboard works perfectly fine. If you're doing quantity of tabs, dropouts, CAD program, plasma cutter, a nice plasma cutter to cut something that small, that'd be the way to go. But when you're doing just one, this is something anybody can do. So, let's keep it going. There you go, hand cut brake tab. Easy, right? Easy. I know I ran that fast. If I would have ran it real time, it would have been really long. And basically you're just piloting the holes for the slots, and you use your grinder with the cutoff wheel and cut the shape. Use your flap grinder for smoothing everything out. There you go. Again, this is something anybody can do. That's why I'm showing it to you. Next step, I'm gonna weld it on, so let's keep it going. Now for the tricky part, and that is getting this powder coat grinded off, this tab welded on, grinded smooth, without taking the bike completely apart. Gonna remove that back wheel, of course, and go from there. Getting ready to weld this up. A couple magnets there, and we're squared up with the dropout. Reason for the light is, even though we look pretty tight and butted up right there, the light is showing me a slight gap in between the dropout and the tab, and I did that on purpose so that some weld will fall in between and, in my opinion, make it stronger. Let's go ahead and weld her up. So I have it tacked in place, and I've since removed the magnets, and the reason for that is I added this clamp to hopefully keep the tab straight while welding each side and preventing the heat from wanting to warp or move the tab either direction. There you go. A couple things I wanted to touch on in that segment was I talked about removing the magnets that was holding up the tab and using the clamp. And again, basically what that's doing is it's creating a jig. Whenever you use a jig, a frame jig, you use that so that the pieces don't move. Anytime you weld anything, it should be jigged. Handlebars, in this case, a brake tab. Had I left the magnets there and you weld down one side, that tab is naturally going to move just from heat alone. So the clamp, I had it literally pinched between the dropout and the tab, welded down both sides, kept it straight. Secondly, for me, I think most brake tabs are an afterthought. They usually are, and they usually look like it. I wanted to make it look like this was part of the frame, and it takes a little more work to make happen. I wanted the lines to follow. I wanted everything to blend. Once you powder coat paint, you shouldn't be looking at the brake tab. So, that's that. Moving on to the suicide shift mount. And again, it's just a piece of 7/8 tubing. So let's go ahead and keep it moving. One more side project here I almost forgot about. Jeremy reminded me. And that is, he had a boxcar shifter here, basically a clamp on. He wants to remove that, weld on a piece of steel so that he can add a bastard shifter. So it's not uncommon for people to add a 7/8 piece of steel welded on. I did a hand coat there so it fits nice and snug. And so here we are, all mocked up. A couple concerns for us is to make sure we get the right angle here. And the biggest concern is making sure we got the angle correct this way so we're not going uphill or downhill. Go ahead and tack it on, remove the magnet, and finish it up. There you go, the fancy suicide shift mount. Again, piece of 7/8 tubing, what you're doing is you're mimicking what the twist shifter would normally go on handlebars. Handlebars are 7/8, therefore you're mocking the same thing. Most people are using the shift unit from, whether it's a Sturmey or a Nexus 3, and moving it down, and then they're putting their suicide shifter over it. So you just need to weld a piece of 7/8 tubing on the side of the frame. That's pretty much gonna wrap it up. Hope you enjoyed today's version of what's happening at Peak Cycles. And until next time, make it a killer day!